Welcome to this week's episode here on Overworked Admin. This week we're going to be covering two things. One, we're going to be talking about user input, and the second thing we're going to be talking about is creating menus for users. So what you're seeing here on your screen should look pretty familiar to you. We've gone over the write host option and how to print things to the screen a couple weeks back. What we want to do now is we want to present information to the users, and we want to gather information back from them, very similar to how you would, picture a menu. As you can see here, there is a simple menu, and you can see the code, right? Write host. We've spoken about write host quite often, and we're using that just to simply print out this memory or this menu. So what we want to do now is we want to get the information from the user so we can use that in our scripts. Maybe you want to perform very specific functions, and at runtime the user needs to be able to give you some sort of information like they would do in a normal program. So what we're going to do is getting data from a user is actually very easy. We're simply going to send this information, this read host, enter your option into a variable that we create. And how we can verify that we have gotten that variable properly is we will just use the write host option and print out my var. So what we'll do is we're going to stop the script, and as you can see, we have our menu that's printed out here. And then we're going to take the result from using read host, which is going to get the value from the user, put it into this variable, and then we're going to write it back. So you can see it's going to wait, and I feel like some grilled cheese, so I'm going to select 4, and then on the line below it prints out 4. It's exactly what you would expect. So how we want to use this is if you build menu structures for your users, you maybe are thinking, okay, so if I get this value, I can go through an if statement, right? Or an if else statement, and we've talked about those. And this is kind of what this would look like. So, if we have my variable, and then we have if my variable is equal to 1, then we're going to do a write host equals 1. And so if the user from the previous example, the setting my variable is equal to 1, as you can see, it would print out 1, and we can just follow this code. So we're setting my variable equal to 1, then we've got our if statement, if 1 is equal to my variable, write host 1. If, and this is the else if, is equal to 2, write host 2. Else if 3, 3. And so as you can see, if we print all of this data here, it does exactly what we expect. We entered in 6 in the variable here, and the else if statement here. And if we send it to something very large, which is not covered in our if-else statements, you can see that it prints out some other number because our final else statement, that's what we've told the script to do. So that's really good. But, in the context of building menus, if you had a bunch of different options going on here, this could be really cumbersome to build, and it would just be very, very sloppy code. So what we want to use in order to improve upon this menu building is a switch statement. And a switch statement is something that you could think of as a very cleaned up, very trimmed down set of if-else statements. And so what we're going to do is we're going to return to this, and we're going to start off and we're going to ask the user to select a menu item. Then we're going to read that menu item in, and then what we're going to do is we're going to print out the result based on the result based on what the user has selected. Let me silence my phone. And then that way we'll get a good result, and now we'll know how to build menus, and we'll know how to respond to menus. So as you can see here, we've just got our write host statements. We've got a variable set, what will be set using the read host option, and we have the statement enter your option, so the user will be prompted. If we just take a look at that again, we can see the cursor is right here blinking, and it's waiting for the user to enter their option. So now what we want to do is let's get into this switch statement. So the switch statement, like you might think, is just opened up using the word switch, right? And what we're going to do is we are going to take our variable, so in this case, my variable. And this is the condition that the switch statement is going to evaluate. So whatever you put in this switch statement, that's what it's going to be looking at programmatically and what it's going to want to take action on. So let's come down to the new line, and it's always good practice to open and close your brackets. And so now what we want to say is, what are we expecting? What are we expecting our people to be entering, or our users to be entering in as values? And as you can see from up here, this menu, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So how we build our switch statement is we're going to say 1, okay? And in this particular case, it's just that easy. You just say my variable, and essentially what this is doing is it's saying if my variable equals to 1, then let's execute some code. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in 1, and then we're just going to say you want pizza. Right? I mean, it's really about as easy as it gets. So it's much easier than writing an if-else statement. Now, if you can guess what happens next, we're going to do 2. And what is 2? You want soup. And what is 3? 3 is going to be a hot dog. Nobody really wants hot dogs because those are bad for you, but Control V. Oh, let me copy and paste this here again. So hot dog, maybe if it's like a really good brat, you know, that's good. Let's make that 3. And let's do, what is 4? Grilled cheese, which sounds pretty good right now, actually. Grilled cheese. Oh, turn my caps lock off. So grilled cheese. Now, and what do we do if a person, you know, doesn't pick something? Well, let's just run this and see what happens. So does this actually work? So as we can see, you know, if you want pizza, select 1. So sure, yeah, pizza's pretty good, so let's select 1. You want pizza. Great, so we've seen this works, and it works pretty much how we would expect some sort of menu system to work. But what happens if we say 7? Well, we've got no options because we didn't program any options for 7. Well, a good thing to do in any type of menu system is that you want to have some sort of catch-all, right? And the catch-all is just to, if the user were to put in a bunch of gibberish or garbage, you want to make sure that you give that feedback to the user and you tell them, no, you really only need to pick these first few options. So how we do that in a switch statement in PowerShell is we use default. And default is a keyword that says anything not covered by my previous switch statements, right? And these are this is your switch statement. I'm just going to print this out. So in this case, I'm going to do, you can only select the items on the menu. Okay, so now we know our 1 through 4 works, and I'm going to pick 7. And it will tell us you can only select the menu on items on the menu. So as you can see, this is a really simple way to start building menus and branching tree structures in your programs or scripts or whatever you want to call them. And you're not just limited to keeping this all on one line. You can, of course, break them out into a normal structure like you would be used to. And you can put whatever sort of code that you would like in these structures. And I'll show you that it still works. So let's enter this and we'll select 4. And you can see it still works. So now if you have a script where users need to make choices and decisions, you can build a menu for them. You can direct them in the way that you want them to behave. And then based on their inputs, you can act accordingly. And now we really have the beginnings of some really cool scripts that we can interact with the user. And that's really the goal. So thanks again for watching this episode of Overworked Admin. If you like the videos, please do click on the ads that our sponsors put. It's how we keep the channel running. Sorry that it took me so long to make this video. I was finishing grad school. I graduated. I'm super happy. So hopefully these videos will be coming out more frequently again. And again, I have a whole bunch of Linux tutorials that I'm writing to. Will take you from not knowing anything about Linux server administration all the way to the point where you can start working on Apache, Linux, MySQL, things like that. Anyway, thanks again for watching Overworked Admin, and have a great day.